what happens is that there's a different stages in our life that we're in. In our 30s, we're never going to die, right? That's the last thing we're going to worry about. But I think when we get in our 40s, we start to realize like, hey, when I need to start thinking of, I accumulate. It's still the accumulation stage, but we start worrying about what's gonna happen.
All right. Oscar Vasquez. So you're an estate planner, is that correct?
Yeah, that's what we do. I've been helping homeowners protect their home for about 15 years. I've been in the real estate business for 28 years. And I started protect helping homeowners protect their homes when has clients start to die. I guess that's when you start to know more people that you start going to more funerals, you're getting old.
Right.
Right?
Right.
And so that's one of the things and that's how I got in. That's how I got involved. And now we just a few years ago we started doing the estate doc prep where we created the software to be able to have estate planning affordable to the masses.
Right. Right.
Um, and that's been something that has always been now we're bringing this awareness, and coming into awareness. I got into it of doing more podcasts or trying to or get my name out there for a simple reason that I read a statistic of 68% of homeowners or people that own real estate in America do not have an estate plan. And it just came to the conclusion to me that that happens because they don't know what it's like to go through probate, and they're not aware of it. So they just, when you once and you're like, dude, I gotta stop that from happening. So
Right. Right. Yeah, I have never really actually worried about it much because I've never had any assets to protect. So for me, I'm almost 40 now, and I we just bought our first house a year ago. And for me, it's more like you don't know what you don't know, like you just said.
yeah,
And and it's I've watched friends and family go through these issues with probate court, and I've sat back and not been a beneficiary to anyone else's will or estate. So I've not paid that much attention. And over the course of the last 5 years, it's something I now worry about because my youngest son, has autism. And we're not sure if he will be able to provide for himself as he gets older. And it's difficult to want to think about because none of us want to think about, oh, what's going to happen to my shit when I die, you know?
yeah,
None of us want to think about that. And
yeah,
so for me, I've started thinking about it over the course of the last 5 years, and I I don't even know where to start, to be honest with
yeah,
you. I don't have many assets. Most of the assets that I have are like physical assets,
sure,
um, that you'd have to liquidate in order to
sure,
add to an estate or something. But like I've told my children like everything I want them to have, but that doesn't mean that the court's going to agree. So how did
yeah.
you said you got started into estate planning by seeing friends and family pass away and not knowing what to do?
Yeah, no,
um
what happened? See, I've been a real estate broker for 20 years, and I've been helping people buy and sell homes as a real estate agent, a broker in the state of California for 28 years. And the more that you've been involved in the business, the longer they get. And here's one thing that I learned. Um, the one that's what you said, there's like huge amounts of nuggets there in there. What you said, it's I think it all goes with there's a lot of misconceptions of estate planning. And the first misconception it's for the wealthy, or I don't have assets, right? That's
Right.
the first misconception, because the assets, the assets that we have, um, everybody, it's a different asset, and estate planning is not just to protect your assets. And that one of the biggest assets that we have is our children, which is our loved ones, because it's to protect. And I always say, keenly, like people are like, so what are you doing now? I always, and I say it like, well, I help people protect the two things that are nearest and dear to their heart. And like, really, like what? I said, their money and their kids. Everything else can go out the door. But the big one of the biggest misconceptions, I'll cover one thing at a time, because you said very many you what you said, a lot of people feel and think that way. And the first thing that you said that I want to cover is that, we never thought about it. And because I think, after doing hundreds, if not probably helping thousands over the years, that what happens is that there's a different stages in our life that we're in. In our 30s, we're never going to die, right? That's the last thing we're going to worry about. But I think when we get in our 40s, we start to realize, like, hey, when I need to start thinking of, I accumulate. It's still the accumulation stage, but we start worrying about what's gonna happen. Our kids today, first time, interesting statistic. Kids today, the first time home buyers that buy a home the first time, are the average age now nationwide is 32 years of age. When I got started, well, you got to remember, in California, the average house is $1 million. You know
Right,
what I'm saying?
right.
That's like crazy. Who can afford a $7,000 payment? But anyways, but now, back then, years and years ago, when I got started, it feels like years and years ago. But the average age was 20. So would that bought a house, right? Because we had a different work ethic, we had different things. Right now, kids want to travel and enjoy everything before they die, right? And do everything. But so that's the misconception of I think that's part of, it's part of the people that we work on. I think our probably youngest estate plan that we ever did was 39 years of age. And it was because it was a teacher, that she was a beneficiary of a trust that her grandpa left behind for her to go to school, and she knew about it. And she said, when I have my stuff together, I'm going to do that so my kids can benefit their trust. Because part of their trust, grandpa's trust for them, was that they can leave any money that they did not use for education for their kids, and grandpa only left them money for education. So that was the first thing. So the misconception is, I think it's an ages. The second thing that you said that is also a misconception is that we don't have things, or assets. Now, assets, it's not just money. We have, in today's world, now we have what's called digital assets, right?
Yeah.
Now we have, and here's the thing: if you could leave it in the will, or you could leave it. I mean, we're going to talk about what the difference between will and trust are, but now your digital assets and your social media accounts cannot be recovered or accessed to, unless you leave that to them, when you're deceased, or
No
log
shit.
that's
Is that a California thing or is that everywhere?
that's no, that's a social media thing. Like,
Really?
Facebook won't have your wife call Facebook and say, hey, I need the access to my husband's account. They're gonna say no.
Right, right.
She
That's
gets
wild.
nothing. Yeah, that is wild, and that is called a digital asset. It doesn't have, may not have. Asset is the value, and it's a monetary value, which is cash value, but it's more than anything, it's the emotional value that
Right.
it has. And 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 I think that, if you leave that asset there, then all the memories, all the podcasts, everything that you've ever done, that's remembering for your family. That's the memories that you leave behind, but they'll be able to carry that and have that with them. So one of the things that we're now doing is putting in people saying, hey, I leave my account I leave my all access, full access to my accounts to X, to my wife or to my kids, so they can, log in and create anything that they want or download it for that sense, right? Um, that's the first thing. So assets, it's not just monetary, but it's emotional value. Um, like a lot of us have an old car in the garage that we're going to get to, but we just haven't got to it. That hasn't, I mean, mine is now, it's a 1964 Chevy Impala.
And those
It's
are
been
usually the things that people fight over. So,
there. Yeah, right. Because they have the emotional value. So, one, they're not they're not like millions of dollars, but it's the value that, man, dad, he always wanted to look at that, or he was always going to get to that. He never got to that. Now in his memory, I want to finish that. That has more value than leaving them $1 million, because that is more. So that's the first conception that I want people to know, that one, you don't have to be wealthy. And here's the thing that you have to really understand. If you own a home or land in the greatest land in the world, which is America, you are wealthy. You are wealthy because we owning that. And here's the reason why: because our government says this. And I always tell people from the podcast, Google this. Google, what's the threshold to go to avoid probate in my state? For example, in the state of California, it's 184.5. In Indiana, it's $50,000. In Colorado, it's 60. Every state has a minimum threshold. If you exceed that threshold, you have to go to probate. And we're going to talk about what probate is, because once you understand it, then you'll never, now you know that you'll, now you know, and you can't not unknow it, right? So you have to go in. So go in and do that. So write that down. What is my threshold in my state? So you guys can go do that. So you know, if you own something or a house, every homeowner exceeds that in every state. Because I think the government does that, or our states do that, to make sure we can afford to pay it. Right? If we can't afford
yeah.
to pay it, then we don't want you. We don't want you to have it. Um, then we are then the next step is, um once you go into the probate process, then you go into that. Then the next thing that you said, which is super important, and many people don't realize this, that with an estate plan, there's called a special needs trust
Okay.
for our children, our adults, or people that just need to be cared for when we're there, when we're not here. And if you don't do that, I'll give you an example. If mom and dad had a child with special needs, and mom and dad pass and they own a home, if that asset gets or they that asset gets, to say the home, right? The family home gets liquidated, the home then at that point goes into the asset, becomes the assets of the child, of the special needs child. Now the federal government says, "Oh, he's got money. Let's stop helping him or her,
Right.
and let's use all his money first, and then we'll start helping him when he runs out of money." With a special needs trust, and that gives him access, that he becomes a beneficiary with assets, not the assets, but he gets access to things that the government won't give him. Like, I'll give you an example. I work a lot with educators, teachers, and one of the teachers in their family, they have a tradition where they go to an amusement park every year. And she said, Oscar, one of the things that we did with the amusement, we go to an amusement park every year, and we want to make sure that she has funds available to continue that tradition. I said, really, how long have you been doing that? She said, we've been doing it for 10 years. Now it's at the point that is more important than Christmas. Right?
Yes. Yeah.
Because
So we do
because
the same thing. We love theme parks.
Yeah. So and those things. And then I said, "Wow, what a great!" She goes, "Oh yeah, we have a calendar on the fridge. It's a tear off, and we do that, or we do, and then we make it part of a road trip. Oh yeah." And I said, "Really?" She goes, "Yeah." And he goes, "And it's not that expensive if you do it, if you plan it out,
Yes,
and you
it
do
really
the."
isn't that expensive. I tell everybody that all the time. Like we love going to Universal Studios, and it really is not that expensive. People want to. I think people when they want to go and have all the fun. And when we go, we usually do like we do like a package of tickets, and we take our own food. We do when we stay at a hotel, we do cheap hotels and stuff like that. We try to cut down a little bit on money so that we have we have fun, but we can continue doing it every year and not break the bank. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, but don't, that's, like money, like my, and this is the, I have, they're not my kids or my nephews, but that's the exact argument. They're like, "You got money, why are you so frugal?" And I said, "I'll tell you why, because I earned it. Unlike you, I don't just show up." Right.
Right.
Now, it's not, "Hey, can I get," when I go to the restaurant, they're like, "You go ahead, can I," and they always, now they ask because they're older, they go, "Deal, can I order this?" You can order when I'm here, I'm okay. One thing, you can order whatever you want, but they're like, "Dude, why are you?" And I said, "Just because you got it, it doesn't mean you have to spend it. You have to be smart with your money so it lasts longer."
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. And
Because
the restaurant thing that you used, the restaurant example when your nephews are out to eat with you and they say, "Oh, can I have this?" That to be honest with you, as a dad, that kind of upsets me when my kids do that at the restaurant. They're
yeah,
like,
they
"Oh,
do.
this costs, $22 for this." And I'm like, "Hey, we came out to eat, I with the understanding that we were going to spend money. Get what you want, man."
That's right. But see that, but because they think that, I said, because that's one thing I always tell them. Listen, when you're with me, don't worry about it. If I invite you to dinner, you eat whatever you want, and they go like, "Well, I don't get you. Why do you're always talking, But I said, no, those are the things that we don't private ourselves from. When I invite you to eat, you come to enjoy. I want to enjoy your company, and I don't want to be asked about that. I already know,
Right.
right? We already know that it's gonna cost. We already know.
Right.
I said, we're old enough to know that we budget. We say, "Hey, it's $30 per head." Sometimes if we go here, and it could be $10 per head depending on where we go. So anyway, so the special needs, it goes into a special needs trust. And what happens is the child can get benefits that the state doesn't cover, like for example, it would be like a computer or a special class, or equipment that sometimes they say he doesn't qualify for that, or he's capable, but to make him or her life easier, then the trust has a little bit of assets that can leave him if the house gets liquidated, right?
Right.
So that gets protected. That's the first. So that is a special needs trust. But let's go back to, I want to talk about the probate, because this is the number one reason. It should be the on the top. It's on the top five. But I think, like, I go over the top three reasons. But the number one reason that people get a living trust is to avoid the all of the probate process in its entirety. Before I go into that, I want to share with you the difference between a will and a trust, because a will is not
Yeah,
enough.
let's get into this because I don't really understand what a trust
Yeah.
really is.
Yeah. So I'm gonna go into the difference between a will and a trust. So a will is a two-page document if you get it off the internet, or 4 pages if you pay 350 to an attorney, right? I mean, so like a 4 page, but in essence, it says, "I love you, I leave you everything." That's
Right.
basically what it says. And then it does not prevent you from going to court, which means probate. The judge still makes the final decision. Now, when we talk about the final decision, the judge never, I've never seen or ever heard of a judge not giving your kids their their share or disinheriting somebody. Now, I have seen somebody get disinherited. It was, and it was even worse. Luckily, his siblings made it right, but he was serving in the service, and they just, he was a career officer, and he just didn't come home very much. It was kind of like absent, right?
Right.
And he got disinherited. He went to probate, and the judge said, "Okay, you three get the benefit of mom's house," and they didn't give the fourth one. And they called and they said, "Well, what do we do?" I said, "Look, just because the judge says you get it, everybody can give up their portion to make it by four." They're like, "We want to do that on the proceeds, right?"
Right.
But he almost got disinherited, which because nobody named him. Nobody named him. It was a will, and he just said my children. It was too generic. It wasn't specific, and the judge says, "Okay, I now give you equal parts to so." And the judge named them, but he didn't name that one child. And they're like, "Well, what do you?" I mean, I said, "Look, I'm not an attorney, but if you own it, then you can give up your portion to make it equal, right? If
Right.
you're
Right.
okay with that." And they're like, "Yeah, it's our brother, man. I mean, yeah." And he literally came home. I mean, now they feel like family now because they're like, "Dude, thank you so much for helping." I said, "Dude, I just came up with one answer. Just divide it. Simple." But it was yet so simple, but it didn't. So one, disinherited, you can't. I have never seen it, but I have seen people try to get disinherited or disinherited by accident. But the probate process, okay, back to the will. So the will says that, and the judge takes it into consideration, and you have to go to probate. Okay, now that we're on a living trust prevents that from happening because it's a private. So one, a living trust is a legal contract, aka agreement between you and your kids that the courts enforce.
Okay.
Okay, and it's a detail. A living trust is about 140 pages long.
Okay.
It has every legal provision, and the limitations to a living trust is only limited to your ability to imagine the instructions you want to leave.
Okay.
So, if you want I mean, like I'll give you a provision that was an aha moment, but it was a teacher as well. She was older, and she was probably like she was getting ready to retire, and she created the living trust and was mostly not because of her house, because she says, "I'm going to liquidate the house when I die. My son's out of the state. He was back east somewhere." And the provision that she left was that she wanted him to take a drug test and a alcohol test because he had history of abuse, and that he couldn't get his inheritance monthly, and she wanted it monthly, and he had a test, and if he tested negative, and it was, I guess it was opioids or something, it was something like terrible, and I go, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry you went through that." She told me the story. It was like amazing, and what she went through, but she got him through, and he was clean then.
Right.
And the provision was that he didn't get his monthly inheritance check, and his kids and a portion of it would still go to their kids, or it was going to get left for his kids to go to
Yeah.
school because they were young kids. And they had to take a drug test, and if they didn't, I said, "You know what?" I go, "That's a little." And such, she goes, "Oscar, he is my only child, and there's two things that as a mother that you're not going to want. You're going to protect your kids, and if there's a way that I can protect them even when I'm dead, I'm going to." and
Absolutely.
and and that is my wish. Listen, well, you know what the good thing is, that your living trust is yours, and you can write whatever you want in it. So, and that's like how deep it could go.
So I thought a trust was kind of like a asset management is what I thought it was. So when I pass away, what I thought a trust would be is I hire an asset management company and do all the legal paperwork, and they manage my assets for my son. And that's what I thought it was. So, would I, if I had a living trust and I passed away, what would the court manage my assets for me, or would it be an asset management company?
No, what you do is, for example, your asset, let's just call it, to simplify the things, is a home.
Right.
Okay. And let's say, for, if you only have your special needs child. Okay. So that way we're not taking, or let's say you had two children, the
Okay.
special needs child and the oldest, or the youngest or oldest, or whatever.
Right.
So what it would happen is, in your living trust, you have what's called an executor or a trustee
Oh,
that you
okay.
appoint.
Okay.
And and one of the gifts that we have today is a comprehensive estate planning guide that has all those questions on there that you can fill in. Like, what is this for? But so what you do is you appoint, for example, your son Jay to, as he is in charge of the house, and he could stay for as long as he wants. And in, let's just say, your assets, let's say your podcast or your jitsi, or however you generate income, if you save a little bit of money, or you put it in, or they could use the money from the house, or to get a mortgage or something, to be able to protect him and have assets, right? If he stays home, so they can live, because that's one of the things that we help you with, to say, hey, it's time. It's, if you could save money, and here's the thing. I always tell people, like, well, I don't have any money to save. I said, you do. I said, it's like your time. We only have time for those things that are important.
Right.
That's it. And I say that because, and we only have money for those things that are important. And the older we get, sometimes we sacrifice the small things that don't mean that much for the bigger things, which is our children. And to say, hey, I'm gonna make sure I think of them. And when they read out, I've been at probably 8 or 9 trusts that they wanted. They say, hey, you know what? You help mom do that. We're gonna share it. We're gonna go over it. And if we have questions, can you be there? I've been there a couple of times. I mean, it's a pretty simple process, but I'm like, look, I'm not an attorney, but yeah, I can answer any questions. And I'm gonna tell you, when the instructions are in there, that what she wanted and how she wrote it, because you write the instructions in your words, right?
Right. Okay.
They use the 140 pages is just the legal jargon, but the ones, that one page where you leave special gifts or special instructions, is, hey, I leave, my toolbox to Johnny, and if he doesn't want it, then give it to anybody that wants it, but I want him to have it, because he always did this stuff, or I want him to
Right.
have grandpa's tools, because he was always borrowing them. Now he could have them,
Right.
right?
Right.
Kind of,
In
it's kind of like those small comments.
in an ideal situation, I would. In an ideal situation, of course, nobody knows when they're going to pass away. Most of us anyway. In an ideal situation, I would give away assets like that, like Grandpa's toolbox. I would give those things away before I died. In an ideal
Absolutely.
situation.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Those, because I think it's one of, like, I had a teacher that she said, I want to see them enjoy it. And I said, then let's sell a couple of the houses.
Yes.
And she
Yes.
goes, you know what? I want to take him, and she goes, I want to, and she goes, I don't know. I don't know about leaving him the money. And I said, well, what would you want to do? She goes, I want to see them enjoy it. And I said, really? I said, you know what would be fun? I said, so we started dreaming. I said, look, if I had that money and I still had the energy, I'd probably rent an RV and pay for everybody to go, and
Yeah.
and she goes, you know what? That's a great idea. And I said, we could do that in the summer. And so she started drinking. And so one of the teachers actually sold their house, sold one of the rentals, and took everybody on an all expenses paid trip that was, I think they went for 2 months on the road. They rented an RV for 2 months. Yeah,
Wow, yeah.
that was amazing. But she said, you know what? And when I said, how did your trip? She goes, oh my God, we had so much fun. She goes, you know what? That gave me more pleasure than the rent that I was receiving from that house.
Oh,
And
hell
I said,
yes.
and we still had
Yes.
money left over. And I was like, wow, that would be, and that's what I always tell people. Listen, we have the money, and the one of the biggest joys is probably giving it away or seeing people enjoy it,
Absolutely.
giving the
Absolutely.
experience, right? If we don't have it, it's the small things that you don't. And I mean, I always say this, the toolbox and those, yeah, those, I mean, I use that as a thing, but it's like
Well, I
the
mean,
wedding dress.
it was a great example though, because like I said, in an ideal situation, I would give those things away. And like I have a personal collection of sports memorabilia that's autographed and stuff like that. Those things are priceless to me. But in an ideal situation, I would much rather, I mean, I'm collecting those things for me. None of my kids really give a shit about sports. So it's like when I die, they're gonna maybe put some of this stuff in a garage sale with garage sale prices and stuff like that. And I don't want to have to leave specific instructions with each item and be like, okay, if you want to, sell this, you don't want to keep it, this is what you have to do. I don't want to do all that. So in an ideal situation, I would liquidate that stuff and
Sure.
give them the cash or use it myself. Or give it away while I'm still alive. That way it cannot be taxed.
Yeah.
That would be my ideal situation. And I say things like that because I have a little bit of I have a coin collection, and none of my kids know anything about coins or money and stuff like that, but they can take some of my coins to a dealer and get just scrap price. And if you're not careful, you'll lose your ass on some of these coins, especially
Sure.
gold. And so with those kind of assets, I would implore, people, listen, you're collecting that stuff for yourself, your kids, if they are interested in it, that's great. But if they're not interested in the things you've collected and it's valuable, like you'd mentioned, that project car that we all have in our garage. Uh, what if your kids aren't into cars? Liquidate that shit while you're still alive. That way your kids can have what they want when you pass away, and you don't have to worry about, oh, are they going to junk my car? Stuff like that. That's essentially what I mean by giving it away before I pass away. That would be an
Sure.
ideal situation for me.
Yeah.
Of course, not everybody's like that. Not everybody has anybody to give stuff away, so they leave stuff to charity or they have an estate auction, something like that. I'm the type of guy that would have the estate auction while I'm still alive.
Yeah, that's great. But and here's the thing. Estate planning, because it comes with like 19 different documents for end of life. But estate planning is for the accidental death that we didn't know that was going to happen to us.
Right.
It's like when we go to dinner and we don't come home.
Right.
That's it's for that plan because we didn't prepare for it. And we were like, wait, God, wait, I have a podcast in an hour. I can't die right now. Yeah, can we do it at 3 instead of 2? No, it's when
Right.
it's our time, it's our time. But estate planning is for that. So I'll go into probate because I want to make sure that people understand what happens in probate. So I'll go in through it. So it's a process. The first thing that happens is if you don't have an estate plan, your kids are going to have to find an attorney, and the attorney, for example, in California, is going to say it's $50,000 to go to probate. If the kids don't have the $50,000, what's going to happen is the attorney will say, no problem. You can sign this paper. You can pay me when you liquidate the house, and they'll be forced to liquidate the house when they go to probate in order to pay the attorney fees. If there's enough equity, they may be able to refinance it. They'll have other solutions. but they may be forced to liquidate the house. That's the first. Not
Right.
only are they grieving, and now they have to make the decision is how do we go out and borrow the money and make that happen? That's the first. The second thing that happens is that the courts publish your assets, your name, and your death. And they publish it for two reasons. One, they want to know if there's any heirs or beneficiaries out there that feel that they are entitled to it to come to court to file a claim.
Or
One.
if you owe anybody money.
Yeah. Or if you owe anybody money. Yeah. So then it becomes a public thing. So they make sure that, because then the court says, okay, we're going to take that and we're going to pay this guy, this guy, this guy, and then you get whatever's left over. In a trust, nobody knows, and the assets get transferred immediately, right?
Okay.
Nobody avoid you avoid the publication, and you avoid the $50,000 of paying the attorney and court fees. The
And that's
second,
just California. Like the state I live in is a probate state as well. So
okay,
it's Missouri. So
every yeah, every state, you can even Google it. What's the cost? And Chat GPT and Google will say it's 3 to 8%. Listen, attorneys don't charge the minimum; they charge the maximum because they
right.
know what they know. Two things are for sure: one, the kids are going to sell the house, and two, if they're out of state kids, they're definitely going to sell the house because they're just not gonna keep it. It's just hard to maintain something across the state. So then the third thing that happens after it gets publicized, then the court gathers all that information, and then the court decides on what happens to you, to your stuff, what happens to your assets, what happens to the home, and then who gets paid. The court decides that for you. So a living trust that never goes to court. That
Okay.
then probate, then after probate, then the court holds the money and to keep it from stating for 12 to 18 months. Now, unless there is a dispute or somebody is not in the court, it doesn't agree, then the court stay take longer. The longest I've ever heard an estate is 8 years from settling. And
Wow.
it was that's crazy, but and it was most of it was because of a couple of heirlooms, some dolls that grandma had that gave to mom that they wanted, and it was like a $3 item or something, but it was the emotional, and
Yeah.
two brothers and sisters fought over that. Then after they get that, they said, oh, so it takes another 12 to 18 months for them to get the assets. Okay. Then the last thing is then before the assets get on there could be a possible tax consequences that can occur. For
Yeah.
example, what you bought your house for, just say you bought your house for 100,000 and now it's worth 1 million because we're talking about California, and there's an $800,000. There could be a capital gains tax or an inheritance tax or a tax that gets added on top of that. So
Yeah.
not only do they lose $50,000, they may be tax consequences. It all depends on where you're at emotionally with that.
So does the living trust alleviate the tax consequences in most cases?
100%. Uh, uh,
That's exactly what I need.
Yeah. Well, because listen, nobody wants if you don't if it's just that tax, but it alleviates probate in its entirety. That means the transfer gets done immediately to your kids. You have you if there's a possibility can it all depends on your taxes, right? But it eliminates the majority of the possible tax consequences. It eliminates the the privacy issue because now it's private. It's only between you and your kids
Right.
and your family. It alleviates the attorney fees, and more importantly, it helps you transfer immediately to the
Okay.
kids. They just need to get your death certificate.
Because that is one thing I worry about. Oscar, my mom passed away. You know, gosh, it's almost 10 years ago now. My mom passed away, and it we were grieving, and my during the funeral process, we weren't sure if the insurance was going to cover the funeral or not, but we wanted to make funeral arrangements. And the funeral home we went to just happened to be the the most expensive one in town.
Sure.
And that's the one my mom wanted to use. But we sat there for hours planning out, like, and she passed away suddenly. She was 56, so it wasn't like she planned it either. But we sat there for hours planning out, what she wanted, and how she wanted it and how we wanted things. And then at the very end, we had to sit there for a couple more hours because we weren't sure how we were going to pay for it. And they wanted the bill settled before we left. And I was like, I don't understand. That's $15,000. I can't come up with that right now. Just bill me for it. We'll get you taken care of. But that's how I thought everything was taken care of. Um, but that's not the case. And my mom really didn't have any assets to speak of. But what she did have, it was a pain in the ass to figure out who's beneficiary, who's paying the funeral bill. And she didn't have a house or anything like that, but she had a husband, and he took like everything. But the insurance things alone was just a pain in the ass to deal with while we were grieving. And so during that time, my wife and I looked at each other and we're like, hey, we better take care of this shit so our kids don't have to deal with this when we pass away.
Yeah, and that's part of the estate plan. That's called the end of life plan, where you say, where do you want to get buried? How do you want to do this? And one of the things is that um you want to, on the life on the burial policy that you get, you want to get a whole life policy. Because, like, for example, if you get one now, when you hit 50, your policy, your insurance goes up.
Right.
Right? And so then at 55 it goes up higher. At 65 it goes even higher. So the younger you get it, and then you want what's called a whole life for the entire life for your burial expenses. But you want to always have your trust named as the beneficiary, because your trust will have specific instructions on what to do and how to do it and where it comes from and where it goes into.
And then the trust will have an executor
That's
who will
correct.
who will carry out my wishes and manage
That's right.
any cash that would be left over.
Yeah, they would, it would either be managed, or they would say you'd have to find a financial institution. You would either find a what, like, most of the people that do living trusts, before as they do that, they get educated on what kind of, they want to be able to get educated, so they have what's called a safe money account, where it has no market loss and it only has gains, and those are called annuities. And that's where most pension funds
Yeah.
put the
Okay.
money. That way the money will survive and be there when it's needed. Because if you
Absolutely.
put it, and I call it the Wall Street casino, if you put the money in the Wall Street casino, and the reason why this is part of the services that we offer, is part of the estate planning. We offer safe money accounts. We offer burial insurance, so we can be able to help people plan for it. We always say, "Hey, listen," and we always do this kiddingly, because by the time we get to that part, we have a good enough relationship. But we say, "Okay, this is the section where we need to pick out your picture for the GoFundMe." Like, what do you mean? And that means, because if you don't get a burial policy, then we're gonna have to put you on Facebook, and the kids are gonna put, they're like, well, I don't want to be on Facebook. What does that cost? Right? And they make that other, and the older they get, they're like, what, why would they put me on? Why would my kids put me on? I don't know. It's a joke. It's a joke, man. Don't take it too serious. But the burial policies are, and because look, to bury somebody in California, it's like $20,000 now, twenty five
Yeah.
thousand dollars. It's
And that's
crazy.
that's a minimum.
Yeah. And that's if the guy's like, oh, did you want mom in a nicer case like this? Like, they
Yeah.
start stringing, like, mom,
I saw
did
I
mom
saw
deserve it?
caskets were like $35,000. I've
Can
seen
you believe
caskets that
that
cost.
shit?
No, I can't. It's
That
wild.
is amazing. It's
We
it's
buried my
still
mom
it's
in a
still aluminum too, though, right? I mean,
right, right, yeah. We
yeah.
we paid my mom. We buried my mom in just like a plain wooden casket that was it probably wouldn't be what she wanted, but it was $12,000. And I'm like, holy shit, just for a box, and it's wild. So yeah, I'm definitely going to put in their instructions on what to do with my body because I honestly don't want them to put me in a casket, like because if they're gonna if you put me in a casket, just make it yourself, I don't
Yeah,
care. I'm dead.
yeah. There's a song that and it's a Mexican song. It's a corrido, and it talks about give me everything you want while I'm alive, and when I die, all I want is a pine box. Nothing more.
Absolutely.
Because you know what? Give me time, give me love, take me to eat, do whatever while I'm alive. When I'm dead, all I want is a pine box, nothing else. Don't
Absolutely.
cry, don't flowers, don't give me all this garbage gifts, nothing. Give it to me where I'm alive, where I can enjoy it, right?
Absolutely.
And I
Absolutely.
think that
I'm with
that's
you.
that and the estate planning. So those are the things that happens to probate. Living trust is the only document that prevents that. And then and at the end of life, on the end of life document, it talks about your burial. It keeps people with living. The number one thing that I hear when we follow up or we get follow ups is we say, "Hey, you're now completed your living trust. You have to now. I'm going to tell you a couple of things. Let me know when we're running out of time, and I'll be able to. I'm going to
Absolutely.
give you
Go
some
ahead.
gifts, okay? But I want to talk about the funding the trust. Right, funding the trust is super important. Um, Funding the trust means you transfer of assets because you own nothing but control everything. The house has to be take title in the trust so it protects it, right?
Okay.
The shares of the business needs to be in the trust so it protects it. That way that can be an easy transfer because the trust says now I leave this to the home to be my children as treated as equals and give them equal shares, right?
Right.
The estate planning documents, and when you plan for those, that's what you want to have happen, and it needs to be funded. When you start funding your assets, and what I mean, you start putting assets in or making an inventory of those assets, that's what the trust protects.
Okay.
Now, 95% of attorneys that do trust and estate planning, they don't fund it because it takes time to do that. I mean, there's a massive amounts of follow up. You got to get to a bank. The bank didn't give you the account name. It didn't do that. Like in California, I believe that if you have over $60,000 in the bank, they freeze the account if you don't have it in a trust.
Right.
If you have the beneficiary, it's up to the bank, but that's a possibility that happens. And so by doing it in the trust, and if it's named in the trust, then it does not do that. Does not go into the trust. So even if you use an attorney, which is the gold standard, right, of doing a trust, now going to go into there's three ways on how to create a trust, right? And the first way is the gold standard is hiring an attorney nationwide. Nationwide, it averages anywhere from $4,000 to $10,000 to create a trust, right? A comprehensive trust. Now you can go get the basics, but whether it has all the legal provisions in it or not, or whatever, but to create the gold standard, that's where you're paying for a done for you, and I used to call it the white glove treatment, but a lot of the attorneys, you're not a white glove. They don't treat you with the white glove. You're just a number. They're putting you through, right? So that's that process. The second way is to do a done for you comprehensive living trust online, which which it means you do it yourself, you kind of answer the questions, but there's an interesting statistic that made us do things different. That 95% of the people that start a trust online to do it yourself don't complete it and don't finish it because there's so many questions and so many unanswered questions on what to do that they don't finish it, and they just say, I'll get to it tomorrow, and then they just never get to it. and
And
they
then
pay for
tomorrow
it.
comes and they die.
Yeah, right. Well, tomorrow never comes. Tomorrow's always tomorrow,
Right.
right? It's never today. So what happens is, what happens is with the attorney, if you want to make changes, because this is a revocable living trust, the revocable living trust, it means it's changeable at any time while you're alive. It does not change. It does not change. You cannot change. It cannot be changed by anybody once you're dead. It's done. Okay, it becomes irrevocable. Then, so every time you make a change with the attorney, it's going to cost you anywhere from 12 to 1,800 bucks. With the software company, they're just going to have to pay a new. They just have to pay a new service because that's their stuff. With our service, with that estate.prep.com, it's a one-time fee. You have unlimited changes every year. You don't have to pay for updates. You have unlimited funding letters, which means you can fund as many of your assets into the trust with no extra charge. Attorneys usually charge 250 $250 per letter. So the more assets you have, that's why it continues to go up, or 500.
Right.
But on average, it's about 250 they charge. So with our software, it's 100% free. There is a 129 for the year that you want to update it, because we hired estate planning attorneys for each state to be
Okay.
able to make our stores compliant. So every year the year that you want to have updates, you pay 129 to be able to. That helps us offset the expense for the attorneys that we have for the update of every state. And then you have unlimited updates, and then you make changes to it on a continuous basis, right?
Okay.
And you add stuff, you take stuff off. It's a living document. And then what we do and what makes us complete, how we do business completely different than everybody else, is that we jump on 3 or 4 Zoom calls and walk you through the process. So first we say the first step is go figure, these are the basics. Go fill this in. And here's how to make it, because it's quicker and easier when someone says, here's this, and here's this. Okay, cool. You don't This is
Right.
all you need to do. And they're like, okay,
Absolutely.
cool. Then the next call we go over, and then we say, okay, now we're gonna go over legal provisions, and we're gonna say what you want. Do you want this? Do you want to leave your do you want your spouse to make changes, no changes? This is what all this means. And then you click where to click the buttons. And we go over all the provisions. And then we teach you how to print it, right? And then once you print it, I mean, because you have to go to different sections, and then we tell you all the things on the documents. And then they're like, on the third call is we show you where the signatures are on those documents, because we say go back, print them, and before you sign them, just read them,
Right.
and then come with questions. And then on the third call we teach you where, okay, remember, this document has to be signed here. You need to have your 2 witnesses. You need to have a notary. Do you need help? And then we walk you through the process. Once you do that one time, updates, we even tell people, hey, how you doing? Is there anything that you need? They're like, no, I've already updated my trust, thank you. I'm like, hey, that's awesome, right? That means we did our job,
Right.
because now you're 100% comfortable how the software works. One, you completed the software, so we make sure that we keep you along. And then we do funding. We help you fund it. Then we say, okay, now that it's created, now we're going to fund it. And that's the fourth call. And then that's where we start talking about, hey, do you want to put some stuff away for retirement, and or if you pass, you leave a little bit of cash to be able to cover some expenses that's there. And this is what $50 a month looks like. This is what $100 looks like, and this is what burial policy looks like. And this is where all these things look like. And then we start looking at all those things to see if you want to. Then at that point, then we take on, then we kind of work through the entire process, and then we're done, kind of a deal,
So
right?
I was listening to you on another podcast as well. So you guys have an AI chatbot that can answer questions when you're not
Oh yeah,
available.
yeah, we do. We do, and that's one of the gifts that I'm going to give because here's the thing it's a actually voice AI. It's not a chat where you text it in.
which is really
Um,
nice.
yeah, well, because here's the thing, um, our clients, our average client's age is 55 to 60 years old
Yeah, yeah.
because when we're that age we know we're gonna die, right?
Absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Even though it's even though it's a get that. Let me get that direct number because I think we update that. I'll get that on there. But
Oh, take
um,
your time. Take your time.
yeah,
So I just wanted to point that out because when do you know you're talking about the Zoom calls and going over everything. If in between those Zoom calls, if anybody has any questions, for the estate.prep.com team, they can go through your AI chatbot, and the AI chatbot, if you don't get the answer that you want there, you can always wait and talk to a live person. But these AI chatbots these days are amazing at not, 10 years ago we had AI chatbots, but they weren't that great. 5 years ago, you started to be able to talk to them like a human. You started to be able to use common
yeah,
phrases and stuff like that. Now, in 2025, you could talk to an AI chatbot just like they're a friend, and
yeah,
it will be able to dissect what you're saying. And most AI chatbots, to be quite honest with you, are not AI. It's large language model, and these are learning machines who are constantly being updated and being constantly learning. And so, if it gets a question that it's never heard before, it will look up that the answer, and then it'll store that in the database. So the AI chatbots that we have today, I'm sure, like your voice chatbot, you can talk to it just like we're talking right now, and it will
yeah.
understand you.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. And I'll give you that number. Now, here's the reason why we created it. Now, we want to have unlimited calls once you become a client, and we want you to on there. We want you to actually, when you go through the process, it's kind of hard to have questions because we say, don't worry about this, worry just about this. We want
Right.
you to understand that process. But if you have a situation or you want to talk to an AI assistant, her phone number is 805-909-4689. That's 805-909-4689. Now, you can call it at the end of the call. She's going to ask you a couple questions. Do you want to speak to a human? And she'll try to transfer you to one of our estate coordinators. If not, you can book an appointment or she'll say thank you. The purpose why we left that is that because if you're up at night and you have a question, you could call her and she'll answer. So she doesn't
Absolutely.
take breaks. She doesn't call in sick. Well, we did have no power here for a while in California because of the fires, and we had like a lot of dark days. But as long as there's power, she's at work, right?
Absolutely.
Other than that, she always picks up. Then she's always taking the incoming calls, and she's there to help with that. The second thing that I like to give is a free comprehensive estate guide. Now, this is when I started this guide. It was like 7 pages. I'm up to 30 pages now. It gives you a list of all the assets you want. It takes away the human element of delay when creating a living trust. What I mean by the human element, because there's questions that you are asked during the living trust that you need to really think about, right?
Right,
On what
right,
you want to have happen. And so we have that as a comprehensive living trust, but full disclosure, just because you fill this out, you don't have a trust, by the way.
right.
You
Yes.
don't have an estate plan.
You got to
It's
file
only
all
the
that
question.
stuff.
Yeah, you gotta file that. Yeah, and you gotta notarize it, you gotta make it legal, and you gotta make all this happen. The next
So
thing,
I just
so
wanted to pop in here real quick, Oscar. We will link the that phone number for the AI
oh,
bot.
perfect.
We will link that in the description to all the podcasts. So
Oh,
wherever the
great.
podcast goes, we'll link that in the description.
Perfect. And then on the for that download link, it's going to be estate.prep.com/guide. It's a free guide. It's a free guide, and you download it and you can print it. And I recommend you print it and you carry it with you until you complete it, or you have it on the dinner table so you and your wife can have that conversation and then start it and stop it as many times as you can until you get to the end.
And if you've got
Because
adult children, involve them in your conversations. If that doesn't bother you, involve your adult kids in the conversations. That way you can ask them like, what do you want? What do you don't want? If you don't want this
yeah,
flower vase over here, we're just going to put it in the garage sale. I think my kids are honest enough and be like, we don't want your junk.
yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, I always tell people just keep in mind that your stuff is yours because it's yours.
Right.
And not our kids, well, in today's kids, right? And I say this generation, they just want they want things that are less complicated and as smoothly as possible. And so that would give you that. And the last thing we have is the is a discount code for the first 10 people.
Okay.
Okay, we're going to give anybody that wants, it's $2,400. Now, I always tell people this: if you knew for sure that probate was going to cost more tomorrow, and the cost of creating a living trust was going to cost more tomorrow, if you got an offer that was irresistible, so what we did is we created a discount code for all the listeners called coffee, and the coffee and the you use coffee, you're going to save $1,000 off the lifetime value. That means instead of it costing $2,400, it's going to cost you $1,495. If you do one update, it pays for itself,
Hell yes.
right? Not only the living trust, but if you just do one update, it pays for itself. And that is a one-time fee, and then every year that you want the update, you can make as many changes as you want, and you make that work for you. All I can
So
tell
that's
you,
that's estateDocPrep.com, and the code is coffee for the first 10 listeners that come in, and you want to do an estate planning. And you have all kinds of free resources. I'm looking at this website right now. There's all kinds of free resources here to to figure out what you're doing, figure out what this is. But estatedocprep.com. And again, Oscar, we'll link all that stuff down in the descriptions. But go ahead. I just wanted to pop in there real quick and get all
yeah,
that
no,
out there so I don't forget.
no, I appreciate that, and thank you so much, and I think that's what we have here to you now. I can own, and I can leave you with that. It's 10 years ago, a living trust with an attorney was $600. It's now $4,000 to $10,000.
Jeez.
Where is it going to be tomorrow? So the
Exactly.
sooner that you get it done, the less you're going to pay. And two, um, it's to protect your kids. You ain't going to have no benefit from it. It's
Right.
just one of them things. One more thing we're going to do is as one of the teachers say, them damn kids.
Yes. Yes. And what I really like about this is that it, like here where I live, there are lawyers, right? But most of the lawyers that I've come across here where I live, they don't really care. And they are so inundated with work that they don't have the time to sit and properly explain things, even if that's their job. But I don't know any estate lawyers. I've not had to look that up. I've not had to, but as far as I know, all the big name lawyers around here are handle everything from criminal cases to estate planning. So there's not with estatedocprep.com, it is estate planning and that's it.
That's it. Well, we do estate planning, and part of the estate planning is having the other essential tools like
Right,
creating
right.
a safe money account, making sure you have your burial post, because that's all part of the estate planning, right? And so one of the things that we always tell people this is, you know, just protect the things you love most. That's it. That's
Your
it.
money and your kids.
That's right. That's right. That's right. So we do that, and well, with that, I'd like to say thank you so much for having me and allowing me to bring amount of value. I mean, I wish we had more time, but
Hey man,
um,
we'll absolutely have to get together again because I do have some more questions. I'm going to look through some of this stuff, and I don't handle these things because I don't want to. So my wife generally does these things, and I we've had the conversation, my wife and I worry about my child being able to sustain his current way of life, if that makes sense.
sure.
He's
Well, that's
only
part of the
he's only
special
five
needs
now.
thing, man.
Right, right, exactly, exactly. And when I heard about that, like when you were telling me about, I had no idea. And that means so much to me to be able to speak with somebody like yourself that has enough patience to come on a podcast for an hour, hour and a half, and talk us through these kind of things. And I'm gonna have to check out a lot of this stuff. And like I
Sure.
said, I don't have $2,400. Like I don't even have $1,400 to put into this stuff right now. But it is absolutely worth getting it started, getting all everything prepared. That way, when I do have that money, I can go ahead and file and get it taken care of. But
You know,
I think
there,
that's go ahead.
yeah, we have because we deal a lot with seniors, and there's cash with strap. We if you book a call or get on the phone, there's payment plans available that we don't announce it very much, but we have had where we can do up to 20 weeks of financing, and we won't
That is
release.
nice.
They will be able to do that up to, it's a different price if you pay it in payments. We'll still give you a massive amount of discount, but it's available. And I mean, we haven't started providing that on the podcast because we usually get those, but those that are, listen, we're getting into a different place. Hopefully things become better in our economy, right? And they
I
become better
agree.
in our home. We look forward to that. However, if it's not there to make it reachable and accountable, just call the AI or reach out to me, and I'll work on getting anybody a payment program. I mean, we're here to help people, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and I always tell people, listen, for what we charge on estate planning and for the accountant clients, we can make a living, but our real living is by being able to help you save for your future. And we make that, and doing the additional services that we do. I mean, obviously in California, we can help you buy and sell real estate. We can't do it across the country, but we could refer you
Not
people.
yet, Oscar.
Not
Not
yet.
yet.
That not yet. Yeah, that's something that we can do, but we do have those available, and we'll get that on there.
Awesome. Oscar, I think that's a great place to leave this conversation. Man, like I said, we're going to have you on again in the future, in a few months. Like if you got any updates to estateDocPrep.com, just
Yeah. Well,
reach out.
listen.
We'll have you back on.
Yeah, no, listen. We didn't even go over all the documents that should come with the estate plan, right? I mean,
Hell
there's
yeah.
those all these documents and all these reasons that come up, and it comes with the estate plan because it's a comprehensive estate plan. I mean, this when we compared apples to apples, our estate plan to an attorney estate plan, it was equal to $10,000 of an estate plan. That's how
Right.
comprehensive it was
That's
because they start charging you 600 for that, 800 for that, 900 for that, and it just keeps adding up because it's a software. We've already done a lot of the work. It's already been paid for. So if you look at it, we kind of letting the estate planning gets divided amongst all the users, so it becomes very affordable.
right. Right.
We'll
I
leave that with
appreciate
that. Thank you.
I appreciate your time, Oscar. And again, that's estatedocprep.com. This is Oscar Vasquez We'll see you guys later. Bye.